How having nothing gives you everything. Imagine for a moment that everything you've been chasing, every achievement, every possession, every external marker of success, isn't actually the source of happiness you've believed it to be. What if the secret to feeling truly rich in life isn't about getting more, but about seeing what's already here? Today, we're diving into one of life's biggest surprises, how having nothing, or rather, feeling like you need nothing, can actually give you everything. This isn't about being poor or giving up your stuff. It's about finding a kind of wealth that doesn't depend on what you own. By the end of our time together, you'll not only understand this idea with your head, but you'll discover how it can completely change how you experience your day-to-day life. The final insight we'll uncover might just be the most freeing truth you'll ever encounter, one that can transform your relationship with everything around you, and more importantly, with yourself. Zen Buddhism has been teaching this wisdom for over 1,000 years. Our feeling of having enough or not enough comes from inside us, not from what we have outside. Ancient Zen masters, sitting with nothing but their robes and a bowl, often found more peace than emperors with palaces. Modern teachers like Thich Nhat Hanh remind us of the same thing, that our mind creates our world, and how we see what we have matters way more than what we actually possess. Think about it. How often do we push our happiness into the future? How many times have you thought, "I'll be happy when I get that promotion," or "Life will be good once I have that new car"? If this sounds familiar, you're experiencing what we might call chasing the horizon. You keep walking toward it, but it never gets any closer. This endless pursuit of satisfaction is similar to what Zen teachings describe as the cycle of craving and attachment. What if these letdowns aren't because the things themselves failed us, but because they were never meant to make us happy in the first place? What if they're like little wake-up calls, trying to point us toward a completely different path? In Zen, this shift is called finding your original face, recognizing the peace that's been there all along, underneath all your wanting. This isn't about positive thinking or pretending problems don't exist. It's about fundamentally changing how you see your life. When we're always focused on what we lack, we're constantly stressed, always comparing ourselves to others, always feeling not quite good enough. But when we recognize the completeness that's already inside us, everything shifts. The world stays the same, but how we experience it completely transforms. Think about this. Two people can have exactly the same life situation, same job, same house, same bank account. But one feels poor while the other feels rich. The difference isn't what they have, but how they see what they have. This is where gratitude comes in. Brain scientists have actually shown that feeling grateful rewires our brains, shifting our attention from what we don't have to what we do have. When we take time to appreciate what's already here, not as some trick to get more stuff, but simply noticing the good that already exists, we instantly feel more abundant. The gap between what is and what I think should be closes, and in that closing, we find real peace. Zen practice emphasizes this kind of open receptivity to what's already present. Have you ever had a perfect moment where everything felt just right? Maybe watching the sun go down, laughing with friends, or just sipping hot coffee on a cold morning. In those moments, you weren't missing anything. You weren't thinking about what you didn't have or what you needed to get next. You were just there, completely whole, totally present. Zen masters would say those moments aren't rare exceptions. They're glimpses of our natural state, always available when we quiet our mind's endless wanting. Here's the surprising twist we're exploring. When we stop trying to fill some imagined emptiness inside us, we discover a fullness that was there the whole time. Zen teachers often use the image of a thirsty fish swimming desperately in search of water, not realizing it's already surrounded by exactly what it needs. Just like that fish, we keep looking outside ourselves for something that can only be found within. Let's explore how this changes the way we think about our goals in life. Some people worry that if they feel complete already, they'll lose their drive and ambition, but that's not what Zen teaches at all. When we come from a place of inner fullness instead of emptiness, our goals transform from desperate attempts to fill a hole inside us into expressions of who we already are. Think about someone who makes music not to become famous or to fix some emptiness they feel, but simply because creating music is part of who they are. Or compare someone who chases money from a place of fear and never enough with someone who creates value because they're sharing their gifts with the world. From the outside, they might look similar, but inside, and usually in their results too, they're worlds apart. When we pursue goals from a place of already enough instead of not enough, everything shifts. First, we actually enjoy the process instead of just fixating on the end result. The journey itself becomes worthwhile, not just a painful means to an end. Second, we bounce back better from failures and setbacks because our self-worth isn't tied to whether we succeed. And third, here's the surprising part. We often achieve more precisely because we're not desperately clinging to outcomes. This isn't just some philosophical idea. It's practical wisdom that modern psychology now confirms. When we're driven by fear and desperation, our brain goes into stress mode, making our thinking narrow and rigid. But when we operate from security and enoughness, we access our full brain power. We become more creative, more connected to others, and better at spotting opportunities we might otherwise miss. Let's go deeper into this idea with a simple example from everyday life. Think about the last time you were really hungry and went grocery shopping. Everything looked delicious, right? You probably bought more than you needed. That's how our mind works when we're operating from a sense of lack. We overreach. We grab too much. We make decisions from a place of emptiness rather than centeredness. Now imagine shopping after a satisfying meal. You're more selective, more thoughtful about what you actually need versus what momentarily catches your eye. This is the difference between living from emptiness versus fullness. The same principle applies to our careers, relationships, and even how we spend our leisure time. When we approach work from a place of desperation, needing validation, approval, or just the paycheck to fill some inner void, we often make compromises that don't serve us in the long run. We take jobs that drain our energy. We stay in toxic environments. We chase promotions that pull us away from what really matters. But when we approach work from a place of inner sufficiency, we can make choices aligned with our genuine values and strengths. We can say no to what doesn't serve us and yes to what truly calls us, even when it's challenging. This doesn't mean we won't work hard or face difficulties. In fact, paradoxically, people who operate from a sense of inner fullness often accomplish remarkable things precisely because they're not hampered by the anxiety and desperate grasping that comes from a scarcity mindset. They can take risks that others avoid. They can weather criticism without being devastated. They can stay committed to a vision even when the path gets tough. Consider some of history's most impactful figures. Gandhi lived with minimal possessions yet wielded enormous influence. Mother Teresa owned almost nothing yet transformed countless lives. The Buddha himself abandoned palace life to discover that true wealth lay in inner liberation, not external abundance. These weren't people who achieved great things despite their lack of material focus. They achieved them because they had freed themselves from the endless chase for more. Now let's talk about the big question many people have. What about real poverty? What about people dealing with actual hunger or homelessness? Isn't it privileged to say abundance is just about our mindset? This deserves an honest answer. Zen teachings don't deny the reality of material hardship or the importance of fighting injustice. Instead, they offer a complementary truth that works alongside our efforts to create a fairer world. Even while working to change difficult circumstances, how we relate to those circumstances inside ourselves deeply affects both our experience and our ability to create change. Throughout history, we've seen people who maintained inner peace and dignity even in terrible conditions. Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, who lived through the Vietnam War, found ways to maintain inner peace while actively working for change. Many Buddhist monks who own almost nothing report greater happiness than many wealthy people. The Buddha himself left palace life, discovering that having everything material didn't guarantee happiness. This isn't about ignoring real problems or pretending material needs don't matter. It's about recognizing that at every level, whether we have a little or a lot, our relationship with what we have deeply impacts how we experience life. And for many of us who have enough material comfort but still feel empty inside, this shift in how we see things can completely change our lives. There's a powerful Zen story that illustrates this principle. A monk was being chased by tigers and found himself at the edge of a cliff. He spotted a vine and climbed down, only to see more tigers waiting below. As he hung there, he noticed a strawberry growing on the cliffside. He picked it, ate it, and exclaimed, "How delicious!" This monk, in a moment of extreme danger, could still appreciate the sweetness of a single strawberry. That's the essence of what we're exploring. The capacity to experience abundance, even in challenging circumstances. Our culture bombards us with messages that we lack something essential, that we need this product, this look, this status symbol to be complete. These messages create an artificial sense of emptiness that can never be filled, because as soon as we acquire one thing, we're told we need something else. It's like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. The real solution isn't getting more water, it's fixing the bucket. But how do we repair this sense of inner lack? How do we stop the constant feeling that something's missing? This brings us to the practical aspects of cultivating a sense of enoughness. So how do we actually practice this? Start with simple awareness. Begin by just noticing the not enough stories playing in the background of your mind. When do you tell yourself you don't have enough or aren't enough? What situations trigger those feelings of lack or comparison? Just noticing these thoughts without judging yourself is the first step toward freedom. I remember hearing about a successful executive who seemed to have everything: wealth, status, family, yet was constantly anxious about losing it all. When he explored his thinking patterns, he discovered a deep-seated belief formed in childhood that nothing was ever secure. This belief drove him to accumulate more and more, yet never feel safe. Simply recognizing this pattern was the beginning of his transformation. He started to see how this belief colored every aspect of his life, creating suffering where there could have been appreciation. This awareness practice isn't about forcing positive thinking. It's about honestly acknowledging what's happening in your mind without getting caught up in it. It's like standing on the bank of a river, watching the water flow by, rather than being swept away in the current. When you notice a thought like, "I'll never have enough money," or "everyone else has it better than me," just label it. There's a scarcity thought. Don't fight it. Don't judge yourself for having it. Just notice it. Next comes present moment awareness, a central practice in Zen. Much of our feeling of emptiness comes from living in a made-up future or dwelling on the past. When we bring our attention fully to right now, we often discover a completeness that was hiding in plain sight. Try this simple practice. For just 1 minute, bring your full attention to this moment. Feel your body, hear the sounds around you, notice your breath moving in and out. In that state of just being here, notice if anything is actually missing from this exact moment. This present moment practice cuts through the illusion that fulfillment exists somewhere else or sometime later. When we're fully present, we often discover that right now, in this breath, everything essential is already here. This doesn't mean we don't have goals or work toward improvement. It means we stop postponing our sense of aliveness and sufficiency until some future condition is met. The third practice comes from Zen's emphasis on gratitude. This isn't about forcing positive thinking or ignoring problems, but about intentionally noticing what's already here that matters. Each day, take a moment to acknowledge specific things in your life that you appreciate. Make this real, not mechanical. What's in your life right now that would leave a hole if it suddenly disappeared? Gratitude practice works because it directly counters our brain's negativity bias. our tendency to focus on problems and overlook what's good. This bias made sense evolutionarily. Our ancestors needed to spot dangers quickly to survive. But in today's world, this bias often creates unnecessary suffering. By deliberately turning our attention to what we value, we begin to see how much is already present in our lives. There's a story of a woman going through a difficult divorce who felt she was losing everything. When she started a gratitude practice, she initially struggled to find anything to appreciate. But gradually, she began noticing small things. The neighbor who watched her kids in a pinch, the way sunlight filled her kitchen in the morning, her own resilience in the face of challenges. These weren't attempts to sugarcoat her situation, but authentic recognitions of value still present in her life. Over time, these small appreciations built into a genuine sense that despite her losses, she wasn't fundamentally broken or empty. As you practice these three simple things, awareness, presence, and gratitude, you'll likely notice a gradual but deep change. The feeling of not enough starts to loosen its grip. You find moments of contentment popping up on their own. Your goals become less desperate and more joyful. You begin to recognize that the fullness you've been searching for has been your natural state all along, just covered up by habits of thinking. These practices aren't quick fixes. They're more like learning to play an instrument. At first, it feels awkward and you won't see immediate results. But with consistent attention, something shifts. The changes might be subtle at first. Perhaps you notice you're not as reactive when someone has more than you, or you catch yourself enjoying simple experiences more fully. Over time, these small shifts accumulate into a fundamentally different relationship with life. Now, let's look at how this inner shift changes our relationships with others. When we feel empty inside, our connections with people often become like transactions. We unconsciously approach others, wondering what they can give us to fill our emptiness. But when we come from a place of inner fullness, we can offer our presence and care without the hidden agenda of getting our needs met. It's like giving from wholeness rather than need. And surprisingly, this leads to much deeper, more genuine connections. Think about the people in your life who make you feel truly seen and valued. Chances are, these people have a quality of real presence that comes from their own sense of enoughness. They're not trying to get something from you. They're sharing from their own fullness. This is the gift of relationship that Zen masters talk about, connecting from fullness rather than neediness. This principle has been observed to transform even the most challenging relationships. Consider one couple caught in a cycle of mutual disappointment, each partner constantly feeling the other wasn't meeting their needs. As they each began practicing inner sufficiency, something remarkable happened. Instead of approaching each interaction from lack, they started bringing genuine presence to each other. They stopped keeping score. They began to appreciate the unique gifts they each brought to the relationship, rather than focusing on what was missing. This didn't solve all their problems overnight, but it fundamentally changed the foundation of their connection. This same idea applies to how we relate to nature. When we feel empty and separate, we tend to see nature as just resources to use for our benefit. But when we recognize our basic connectedness, we can experience nature as part of ourselves, something to be in relationship with, rather than just used. Zen has always emphasized this deep connection with the natural world, seeing humans not as separate from nature, but as expressions of it. Our environmental crisis is, in many ways, a crisis of perception. We've forgotten that we are nature, not separate from it. When we rediscover our fundamental connection with the natural world, our behavior naturally shifts. We stop treating the earth as a warehouse of resources to exploit and start recognizing it as the living system that sustains us. This shift isn't just good ethics, it's accurate perception. As we go deeper into this understanding, we touch on the most basic question: who are we, really? Are we incomplete beings always needing more stuff to feel complete? Or are we expressions of a basic wholeness, just temporarily forgetting our true nature? Zen points to the second view, that our deepest identity isn't the lacking separate self we usually think we are, but something much more complete and connected. This understanding challenges our entire culture's orientation. We're taught from childhood that we are isolated individuals who need to acquire and achieve to be worthy. But what if this fundamental assumption is incorrect? What if we are already expressions of a vast completeness, like waves already part of the ocean? What if our sense of separation and lack is the illusion, not our sense of connection and sufficiency? Modern psychology, quantum physics, and neuroscience are all converging on insights that ancient wisdom traditions have pointed to for millennia. That our sense of being isolated entities is a useful but ultimately limited perspective. At deeper levels, we're profoundly connected with each other and with all of life. When we touch this truth experientially, our sense of lack often dissolves naturally, replaced by a recognition of the abundance that flows through and as our lives. This brings us to the final and perhaps most life-changing insight of our journey. The experience of having nothing yet having everything points to what Zen masters call our original face, or Buddha nature. The truth that our essential nature is not emptiness, but fullness. Not separation, but connection. Not lacking, but complete. Our journey isn't about getting what we don't have, but remembering what we've always been. When we experience this truth, not just as an idea, but as a felt reality, everything changes. The anxious chasing that fills so much of modern life starts to fall away. We discover a deep peace that doesn't depend on our circumstances. And here's the surprise. From this place of not needing anything, we often naturally attract the very experiences we once desperately chased. This isn't some magical thinking or manifestation technique. It's simply what happens when we stop operating from desperate lack. We make better decisions. We recognize opportunities we would have missed. We show up differently in our relationships and work. And most importantly, we start to enjoy the journey itself, rather than constantly fixating on some future state of arrival. Zen doesn't promise some perfect state where you're blissed out all the time. It offers something more real, a way of relating to life that lets you experience richness, even amid life's ups and downs. You'll still have preferences, still have goals and dreams, still feel the full range of human emotions. But underneath all that runs a current of basic okayness, a knowing that who you are is already complete, already enough. When difficulties arise, and they will, this foundation of enoughness provides a resilience that's impossible to cultivate from a place of lack. Instead of being completely devastated by losses, you can face them with an underlying stability. Instead of being defined by failures, you can learn from them without being destroyed by them. This isn't emotional bypassing or denial. It's a more robust way of engaging with life's inevitable challenges. As you continue practicing this way of seeing things, remember that this shift isn't something you achieve once and you're done. In Zen Buddhism, this kind of awareness is what Dogen called practice enlightenment, Shusho Ito, a continuous process of returning to the recognition of your inherent completeness, moment after moment. Be kind to yourself when you forget, as we all do. Simply noticing that you've slipped into the not enough mindset is itself a moment of awakening. If you'd like to explore these ideas further, I highly recommend the book Peace is Every Step by Thich Nhat Hanh. In this beautiful guide, Thich Nhat Hanh shows how mindfulness allows us to discover the richness that's already present in our everyday lives. He offers simple practices for transforming ordinary experiences, walking, breathing, washing dishes, into opportunities to feel truly abundant and complete. His gentle wisdom reminds us that peace and fulfillment aren't found in acquiring more, but in recognizing the completeness that's available in each present moment. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. How has this idea of having nothing yet having everything shown up in your life? What challenges do you face in remembering your completeness? Your experiences might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. This isn't the end of our exploration. It's an invitation to keep discovering one of life's most transformative truths, that in having nothing, we find everything. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video from Moon Mine Temple.